Let's begin with a moment of silence and reflection, please. All righty, thank you so much. And we'll officially call the meeting to order and welcome all of you here. I don't see anyone that hasn't been to our meetings before. And same as always, information is on the back table if you want a copy of any documents or anything that is available to the public. And I would ask you to stand and pledge allegiance to the flag to my right, please. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Number 4 on the proposed agenda is a consideration of approving the proposed agenda. Is there a motion we approve?
I have a request to add to the agenda. Add as proposed to item 7B, the consideration of the Parks and Rec Trust Fund grant contract.
Which item, David?
Item 7B is my suggestion.
Anything else?
I would like to add to the discussion of Public Works Director Clemens, 11B, I would simply like some discussion of the situation that occurred during Hurricane Ian with the sewer system shut down and whether there needs to be any consideration of remediation moving forward. Okay? Thanks.
Anything else? All right, hearing none, is there a motion to approve the amended agenda?
I'd like to make a motion to approve the amended agenda as amended.
Second. All right, any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed say no. The agenda is approved as amended, and we are now looking at number 5, consideration of approving the minutes from September the 20th and September the 28th meetings. Is there a motion?
Motion to approve.
Second?
I'll second it.
All right, discussion, hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed say no. It's unanimous, Madam Clerk. Number 6, public comments on agenda items. I've just been handed a list here. Mr. James Bauer, if you will, come to the podium and give us your name and address and so forth, and you've done it enough that you probably know all the way it works.
I just have a question for Mr. Ewart before I start. When you say 7B is now on the agenda, and you say you called it a quote grant contract unquote, is that the Part F grant?
Yes.
Okay. So 2 committee meetings ago, I was pleasantly surprised when the matter of the $500,000 Part F grant was being voted down. I thought it was great that the commissioners as a whole were being circumspect and reasonable about providing more money and energy and ransoming ourselves to this pier. I attended an HBPOA, the Property Owners Association meeting, to find out that the day after, once again with no public comment, no hearing, in violation of Section 143.318.12 of the North Carolina Constitution, as well as the 14th and 5th Amendment of the United States Constitution, the committee had yet had another special meeting and approved this idea, this Part F idea. Why is this idea a bad idea? To ransom a $3.3 million purchase for $500,000 grant that allows absolutely no commercial development for 25 years and handcuffs us as a whole to a white elephant is ridiculous. To spend $1 more million on this dilapidated joke and to make it quote unquote safe is also ridiculous. Parking is not going to pay for this. And if we would lose the pile of sticks, which is what it is in a storm, because of this $500,000 grant, we would be married, handcuffed, ransomed in order to have to rebuild this pier. And I have to ask at every meeting that this comes up and it's on the agenda. What does it cost to insure? What are the quotes? What is the plan? There's never a plan about this. We just keep going further and further in a hole with no plan. That's the Part F thing. I'd like to say, as a person right after Hurricane Ian on Section 11B, I was watching a Holden Beach pickup truck drive down the beach. I was outside in the front of my property in about 14 inches of water when I noticed several of the membership in the white pickup driving by at a low speed, fording about, I'm going to say 16 to 18 inches of water. To go on with this bike path idea without thinking about the impermeable surface area of what this is going to do and what it's going to do to exacerbate our already terrible flooding condition is ludicrous. It's absolutely insane. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Madam Clerk, that concludes the list of speakers according to the list I have. Is that correct?
Yes, there was one that's submitted online, so it's on the website and in front of you guys for your review.
Thank you. Number 7 on the agenda.
Mr. Mayor, I can't unwait to do sign in, may I speak?
It's up to the commissioners.
If it's an agenda item.
Follow me. Is it an agenda item, sir?
It is.
Yes, sir. The commissioners have made an exception, which is their choice. Name and...
I'm Irvin Woods, own property at 289 Ocean Boulevard East. The agenda item that I'm speaking on, and I don't know enough detail, deals with vinyl siding. If what you're discussing is strip vinyl siding, I fully agree that it should be banned at Holden Beach. My house is made with large sections of a vinyl material that looks like shingles. The house was built in 2008. I've been there for every storm except one from 2008 and have never had a piece of siding of that big sheet siding come loose. I just want to be sure that if you're dealing with vinyl, that you specify those things that are an issue. And I can tell you that down my property is out in front of Dunescape, and when the houses with the strip siding have come apart, it gets blown everywhere. It's easy enough to pick it up at a lot of Holden Beach, but when it gets strewn all in the brush and the trees and the growth back at Dunescape, it's an eyesore for a long time. Thank you very much.
Thank you,
Appreciate it,
sir. Mr. Hewitt, are you going to speak for Assistant Town Manager Ferguson?
Yes, sir. Just as
We're on number 7.
Yes, sir. As a way of introduction, Congressman Mike McIntyre from Warden Smith is going to give the board their legislative and advocacy update. He's here with us tonight.
Thank you so much. Thanks to all of you all for the opportunity to come and be with you. It's great to have the opportunity to work with the town of Holden Beach and the wonderful people who live and work and worship and retire and play here. And being in Holden Beach on a day like today is even more glorious. So it was great to be able to come down to be with you. I'm pleased to be joined today by audio connection on phone with Roger Gwynn, who is the CEO of the Ferguson Group, who has worked with us hand in glove for the last several years on all the technical monitoring on Capitol Hill and the research and background work that we need to have done continually with staff and with subcommittees and full committees up on Capitol Hill so that we have eyes and ears on the ground in addition to what we're doing here on the ground locally. Also, Jun Soo Yi, who is with Ferguson Group, he replaced Stephanie Missert, that many of you remember, who has worked at length with the town and will be continuing to do the kind of research we need. Earl Stockdale, who has actually been here before, as has Roger Gwynn. Earl Stockdale is the former chief counsel to the Army Corps of Engineers, and he works with the Ferguson Group and us, therefore, as well. when we think about the opportunity to come before you today, I know throughout this year, beginning the very first week of January, when I met with the town manager and the assistant town manager here and then had a chance to meet with the mayor, we got right out of the gate. Holden Beach was the first community that I was in to literally kick off this year. And as they know, I've had several subsequent meetings, both in person, when I've been here in Holden Beach and have come through and met with them, as well as the opportunities we've met by, obviously, and stayed in touch by phone and by video conference, including nearly a 2-hour video conference yesterday with the assistant manager and the manager about current issues. So in my report today, I know we submit a report monthly. I will not read a report. I just want to highlight some things and let you know where we are as we're getting ready to close out not only the calendar year, but the congressional term. The last 2-year term is now coming to a close in Washington. Congress has gone home to campaign. It's that season, as you all well know, but they'll be going back right after the elections in early November. And then we'll be there right up until Christmas time to finish up the business of this year. And that's the first thing to report, is that government would have shut down if they hadn't taken some action. The federal fiscal year starts October 1st, and so having not come to a full agreement on the federal budget by September 30th, just a couple of weeks ago, they voted for a continuing resolution to keep the federal government operating. And so when they return, not only will they have to deal with finalizing the overall federal budget, but they'll have some specific issues to deal with to close out the calendar year and the 2-year congressional term, which means we'll have a new Congress starting in January with a whole new set of structure in terms of committee and subcommittees and the opportunities that we'll need to be ready to jump on right away. Generally speaking, in that continuing resolution to keep the government open, of note, there were several other provisions, but one of them was to put disaster relief money in that continuing resolution to the tune of $19 billion. So that was a healthy chunk of change to add assistance for FEMA. And some of the other provisions in there included Ukraine and some other technical things that are currently happening that needed attention. When Congress comes back after the election, the National Defense Authorization Act will be handled right away, because that's for our country's defense, obviously, and usually that is a must-pass legislation that sometimes can attract other pieces of legislation, but we know that Congress is expected to pass that defense authorization soon after they come back in November. And then the WRDA Act, WRDA, which is the acronym for Water Resources Development Act. We've discussed that before. It's been in our reports throughout this year, and even last year as they were working on preparation for the introduction of the act this year. It authorizes much-needed investments in programs and projects of the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers across the country. So there's general consensus that that moved with bipartisan support as well. The Supreme Court just convened on the first Monday in October, which means just a couple of weeks ago on October 3rd, and heard oral arguments in the Sackett versus EPA case. And the reason I mention that in this meeting is that that is the case that now, after years and years of disputes and bickering about whether or not certain lakes or certain ponds on people's property is considered waters of the United States, or WOTUS, W-O-T-U-S, you may hear it referred to, and whether or not that therefore invokes the power of the EPA or other federal agencies. That is the case now that has made its way all the way to the Supreme Court, and will probably have a dramatic effect, whatever the court's decision may be. The court has heard the arguments now. The decision could really come any day from now till before Christmas is the expectation. And that will determine also authority of the EPA and even the Army Corps of Engineers in terms of what are considered to be waters that connect to other waters that ultimately would fall therefore under federal jurisdiction, like tributaries or creeks that tie into larger rivers or tie in ultimately to the ocean, and how far does that definition go as to when waters connect with other waters that would fall under federal jurisdiction. Of other interest, on the national level to your purposes here, the bipartisan infrastructure law that got so much news last November when it passed now has come almost full circle for 12 months, and the Senate Environment and Public Works Committee held a hearing just in the last 2 to 3 weeks near the end of September, talking about the billions of dollars going into federal infrastructure projects such as roads, bridges, and water infrastructure. One of those is under a program called the PROTECT, which is an acronym, but PROTECT Formula Program to provide $7.3 billion over 5 years for highway infrastructure to make it more resilient to increased risk of storms and floods. So you'll start to hear more conversations about that as well. And then the House Transportation and Infrastructure Committee, which is one that Congressman Rouser sits on, also held a hearing near the end of September, talking about the 50 years that have now passed since the Clean Water Act was originally passed. It's hard to believe that's been half a century ago. 165 members of Congress wrote a letter to the Supreme Court about the Clean Water Act and its impact, and they did that in the context of this major Supreme Court case, Sackett versus EPA, that I mentioned a few minutes ago, to see how that's going to impact with the Clean Water Act in the court's decision. Also, with the Inflation Reduction Act, which you probably heard about in the news that recently passed, EPA and the Interior Department are having to ramp up staff. Their staff have been declining in recent years. They're getting ready to hire probably hundreds more people around the nation to help deal with some of these programs now for implementation to help communities. The Energy Department, interestingly enough, had been increasing staff, but not those two departments or agencies that need additional help now on Interior and EPA. Bringing all of this home, as we look toward the end of the year, I'm very pleased, as many of you know, back in spring we worked with your town manager and assistant manager. We had discussions at length with the mayor. We had virtual meetings back in June with our congressional and senatorial folks that represent you in the House and the Senate up in Washington. And I've got to say, this is incredible. We had not one, you hope a congressman only gets a limited number of congressionally directed spending projects or earmarks, and it used to derisively be called pork barrel. Well, Congress, I was there when it was both ways. When you could direct projects back home, then that stopped. And then we said, we'll just have the agencies do it, and it'll be done purely on merit. Well, then what happened is over the last decade, agencies were making all these decisions, and we're not accountable because they're not elected officials. The bureaucrats would just sit there and have a meeting and decide, well, who's going to get the money this year? And they just figured out themselves, and we're not answerable to anybody that would elect them. So Congress has gone full circle, and now they've gone back to having earmarks. And in that process, which started last year, and then we were ready for it, of course, this year, we didn't get one or two, we got three. And there is no other community that I know of in this region, this part of the state, and hard to find any in North Carolina that got three direct congressional appropriated projects approved. We thank Congressman Rouser for that. All three of them made it through the House and have gotten all the way to the finish line almost. Congress has got to pass the budget now before Christmas. And we thank Senator Burr's office because his office got behind one of them in a strong way to make sure that it was going to push through on the Senate side. We've got the cooperation of both senators, Burr and Tillis, and of course Congressman Rouser in the House. And we feel very, very good about the position of these. And we're talking about $1 million for the Brunswick County Beaches project as it was originally known, but the Holden Beach section we're talking about, that would be included in a general reevaluation report for what the Corps has to provide to make sure it's doing its part in the general reevaluation report for the Holden Beach project. And then $2,669,867, so almost $2.7 million for the Greensboro Street Lift Station number 2 hazard mitigation project right here in Holden Beach. That was included in both the House Interior and Environment appropriations bills. And then $100,000 request toward the beginning of the Ocean Boulevard Stormwater Mitigation Project, and that was included in the House Energy and Water Development Appropriations Bill. So we are pleased, we anticipate, and are optimistic, realistically, we are optimistic that these three projects should all go through and be approved. We don't see any opposition now that we've gotten this far after this long a time fighting for these projects to come through. So we hope to give you a good report on those before the end of the year. And then finally, the general reevaluation report itself for the project that Holden Beach is in cooperation with right now with the Army Corps. I know the Corps came here recently, and I want you to know that we're doing everything we can to advocate for this town to be treated fairly by the Corps. We, as the town manager and your assistant manager can tell you, we spent almost 2 hours on the phone yesterday, bit by bit going through this, and with our friends in the Ferguson group who are on the phone right now, including, as I said, Earl Stockdale, who's the former chief counsel for the Army Corps itself, and is working with the Ferguson Group to talk about every angle that could be considered to convince the Corps to continue with this project that you have committed to and that they, quite frankly, encouraged you to commit to, as you know, in the last 3 years. And that to the extent that they're saying that there may be any difference in the timing or the cost, that the money that's available through the Disaster Relief Act of 2019, the monies that were left over from disaster relief back then, are now being made available to help complete Corps projects. And of course, if that money can be accessed, then if there's any cost difference, that could be applied 100% federal cost. And obviously, that would be the ideal situation. So I want you to know, I was at the Waters Summit, as it's called, that Congressman Murphy and Rouser from North Carolina, they represent the entire coast together, as Walter Jones and I used to. And so they had beach communities and coastal communities from all across and other eastern North Carolina communities who have water and flooding issues. And I talked to Rouser myself face-to-face about this issue and made him aware, because I wanted to make sure that they knew the seriousness of making sure that the Corps does right by Holden Beach to see this project through. And that the disaster relief money, to the extent our congressional leaders can lean on the Corps to make that decision in a favorable way toward Holden Beach, that they know that we're pressing on that and that the town would want that to happen. We've already been in touch, and as our friends online with the Ferguson Group can say as well, with both senators' offices, including a conversation today with Senator Burr's office, one scheduled by the end of the week with Senator Tillis's office, and a follow-up with Congressman Rouser's office tomorrow. So, I mean, every day we're making sure that the awareness is strong in terms of what our congressional delegation, senators, can do to make sure that the project to help with beach renourishment here continues, and that it has the support it needs from the Corps of Engineers, and that you are being treated fairly. I know that the Corps offered at their last meeting, it's my understanding, that they offered to come back if you had any further questions, and we would all advocate for you every way we can, but we think you ought to bring them back and ask some questions to get clarification if you need any on this request for the disaster relief money assistance that would again be at 100% federal cost, and for understanding benchmarks on the project itself. You've come a long ways. You were approved for this project, you know, in the last 3-year period. You're in a great position to be able to get the help you need, and we don't want some issue with the Corps now stumbling along on how these issues are handled to slow it up. And so we encourage you strongly to have the Corps come back and to get some questions answered that there may need clarification on. In the meantime, we're not waiting. We're going ahead and doing everything we can, not only to work with the Corps, as your town manager knows yesterday, in following up right now. We're waiting to hear back from the Corps on some of the technical parts of this. But we're going ahead and talking head on, literally, like I said, to your congressional and senatorial delegation about making sure everything can be done to help this community successfully go forward with this project. And with that, Mr. Mayor, again, thank you for the opportunity to be here. We are going to still be in touch as much as we need to with your town manager on all these projects. We're going to be monitoring to make sure these other 3 projects we know have been approved, get them over the goal line by Christmas. And maybe that'll be a great Christmas gift to come back to the town to see some money come back. And again, have Holden Beach in a unique position to have 3 projects actually get approved with earmarked funds from the United States Congress. Thank you very much.
Any questions? I would just like, on behalf of the commissioners, the town, the staff, and everyone involved with Holden Beach, we want to thank you for your good services, sir. And you brought home the bacon, and we want you to continue to chase the pig.
Okay.
All right?
Yeah, in this part of the state, that's something you can readily take on anytime. But when we get success, we rejoice, and we rejoice with you. But thank you so much, Mayor, for your kind words. And thanks to all of you. We enjoy working with you.
All right. Thank you, sir.
God bless you, and thank you
Thank
so
you.
much.
Mr. Hewitt, 7B.
Yes, sir. This is the North Carolina Parks and Recreation Trust Fund grant. Based on the board's direction to pursue grant opportunities to assist with land acquisition related to the pier properties, staff submitted a part-if application earlier this summer, which was approved by the state in the amount of $500,000, which is the maximum amount eligible for award. The contract is before you this evening for consideration, and it was the #1 ranked application by the regional consultants scoring the applications. The suggestion motion is to authorize the staff to have the contract executed.
Is there such a motion?
Do we need, David, in other words, we need a motion to move forward with this grant?
Authorize the staff to have the contract executed. Yes, sir.
I'd like to make a motion that we move forward with this grant and execute the contract.
All right. Discussion, further discussion.
I'm going to raise one more time. This is a $3.3 million piece of property that for $500,000, you are ceding it over for in perpetuity use only for recreation. I know it's our intention that we would keep this property for visitor and townspeople use as much as possible, the pier, the building, et cetera, but in perpetuity, I mean, you don't know 25 years from now that there might not be a need to do something else with that property, or there might be a total change in what people want to do with the property. I do not see that $500,000 is enough against $3.3 million to give up the right of control for this piece of property. I voted no before, I voted no a second time, I'm going to vote no again, and I am just pleading with you to please consider why you want to take $500,000 to tie our hands this way.
Well, it was my understanding, we talked with the people that were doing, that were going to give us the grant, and we asked specific questions about what we could do and what we couldn't do. And I think at that point is when we decided to move forward. And in my opinion, it did not really tire our hands to the point where we couldn't do what we wanted to do as a board.
That's today. I'm talking 25, 30 years from now. It can only be for things that are designated recreational uses. And I'm going to remind you, too, that whatever is recreational use today by one authority or one agency could be totally changed 25 or 30 years from now. Nothing stays in stone at an agency level. But I'm just saying, I do not think it's enough money for us to tie the hands of this town in perpetuity.
Any further discussion? Hearing none. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed say no.
No.
4-1, Madam Clerk. Motion passes. Chief Dixon, police report.
How are y'all doing this evening?
Good, how are you?
Wonderful, wonderful. So, there's not much of concern in the September report here. It's pretty normal operating numbers for this time of year. Crowds are decreasing, call volume's going down a little bit, so that's making us happy. We're spending some time trying to get caught up on our in-service and all that. Of course, by the end of the year, we have to have our, some people call it continuing ed, but our in-service training has to be completed by the end of the year. So now that we've gotten through the summer, we're focusing on that, trying to get that finished up. If you have any questions on the police reports, I will answer them. If not, I'll go into a couple of public service announcements, and my part's going to be short and sweet tonight. All right. What I do want to mention is more of a reminder to everyone. The speed limit did not change this year to 45. That got voted on, I don't know, a month or so ago, 2 months ago. Anyway, the speed limit is going to remain 35 on the far west end of the island. So usually by now everybody's starting to pick their speed up because the crowds are dying down. They're used to the speed limit going back to 45. If you live on that end of the island, the speed limit is still 35. It will remain 35 all winter long. So just try to remember that. We've actually gotten several questions over the last couple of weeks, a lot of phone calls coming into the office about pets on the Strand. And just to remind everybody that as of September 10th, the 9 to 5 restriction for pets on the Strand is no longer in place. The leash laws and all of that are still in place. They stay 24/7, so. And then the last thing, Festival by the Sea is in 2 weekends from now. It's October 29th and 30th.
Sir.
So that's a big event coming up, just to remind everybody. Other than that, I don't really have much to offer.
Any questions from the commission?
Yeah, I just have one question about generally over the summer. We did designate that there could be parking from 2 to 5 a.m. in the Jordan Boulevard parking area, and you guys said that was because you could keep an eye on it and you didn't anticipate having any problems with people leaving cars, large numbers of cars overnight because they didn't have any place to go, et cetera. Was it a pretty quiet area over the whole summer, would you say?
The Jordan Boulevard area?
Yeah, where where it was, we can keep an eye on it, so we didn't say no parking 2 to 5.
Right. We didn't have any calls of concern that I specifically remember. I mean, there was a lot of activity with the bars and everything down there, but there was no calls of concern that stand out to me.
Okay, thanks.
Any more questions?
Good job, Chief.
Thank you.
Thank you
Thank
for
you.
all you and your department do. Mr. Evans, number 9.
Commissioners, Mr. Mayor, as usual, we're pretty busy over in the Specials Department. I'll just run down through the list. I won't go through those total numbers on the pages before that. We are right now, currently, we are carrying active for new homes is 44 permits. We have a total of 282 active permits. Permits that are issued over 30,000, we are currently tracking 2. We just started tracking those because whenever we have a downturn in the number of permits issued for new homes, we usually have an upstick in the number of what we consider substantial improvements or large renovations. And so we started tracking those because it eventually happens every time we have a real hard cycle of a lot of permits issued for new homes. Permits issued, waiting for be picked up, we had 18 on the 11th that were waiting to be picked up. We've had numerous more since then. The total permits that we have in the barrel of our gun right now is 344. Permits in review are 11. CAMAs that are in review are 4. Zonings that are in review are 5. And the number of CAMA permits that were issued is actually 6 for last month. Permits that we serviced over the month were 120. That's the ones we put our hands on that we had to take some activity or some use that we weren't doing plan review on. And of those 120, there was 525 inspections carried out for that part of the month. We don't track number of phone calls, the number of complaints, but we're going to try to start tracking those as well. I want to make an announcement. Every year, the town of Holden Beach, and we get plenty of credit for this throughout the state, but it's time again for our contractors informational meeting. We try to fill the room up every year, and we do pretty well with that. This is our 11th annual meeting. It'll be on November 10th this year, which runs consecutive with what we've done in the years past. We will be finalizing the agenda this next week. We have every year for our contractors informational meeting, we have a representative from every contractor's board that does work on this beach. If you're a contractor and you got a board, we bring them to the table so you can talk to them and get information from them. We also give electricians 6 hours of Con Ed during this time, or we did last year, and we're hoping to be able to provide that again. And what we do is that we try to cut down on the number of our inspections, re-inspections, by providing information on those inspections that we have a tendency to see most turndowns. And it's critical this year because there have been a lot of changes in the electrical code and some in the building code. Quite a few amendments this year, and I suspect there's going to be a lot more since the hurricane down in Florida. because we base our code off of the international ICC code. So that's what we've got going on in the inspection department, and we look like we're going to be just as busy as we were last year, based on what we're seeing.
Tim, what time is that meeting on November the 10th?
Starts at 8, ends at 5, and we do have an agenda. Most of the contractors come to it, and we find it it's very beneficial. When I first came here, we had a real high turn down rate, and so the only way that with one inspector that we could keep up, instead of trying to educate them one turn down at a time, we found that it was better to educate them, you know what I mean, all at once, and that way we don't have to clog the system up by stacking inspections one right after the other when they could have passed.
Again, Tim, I think that's helping a lot with the perception of the inspections department. I think I have not had any issues or calls or emails in at least in over a month now. So whatever you guys are doing over there, which I see what you're doing, it's working, Tim.
Yeah, well, I think the biggest thing is we're fully staffed, or partially fully staffed. We were shorthanded for a while. We were trying to, do the best we could with what we had, and we seem to have some really good staff over there now. We've made a couple of really good hires, and their aptitude for the material is very high. It's very high. Yeah.
You want to continue with number 10 in reference to the dunes?
I don't know. I need to catch my breath. 9403. This was the frontal dune. There was people talking about exceptions to the frontal dune. We were tasked with sending this off to the planning board for them to take a look at what could be done. The planning board decided for us to bring back some options for them. We brought back 5 options. The options the one that is before you now is the option that the planning board chose. This option was also advertised. It didn't have to be advertised at the planning board level, but we did choose to advertise it so the public could have some input. Let me get to it. 25, 27. So that's where we're at. And basically what it ended up with was some minor changes. It was left to leave it in 94.03. Staff recommended that it stay there with these text amendment changes that are added to it. But there was no real substantial changes in the ordinance itself. Or the planning board didn't recommend relocating it into the land usage as well.
So other than the changes in some of the wording, it pretty much maintained the same?
Yeah, it pretty much reads the same way, yeah.
Tim, what happened to we had a request, and I know that there were assignments made, that there would be examination of what other beaches are doing, just for comparison of how they are handling their dunes, what their ordinances say. I don't see any kind of write-up here. I also have to say, it's fine to give us this, but like a one-pager of how it came to this decision would be useful, or append all of the minutes to the meetings, because a lot of people will only read this. They will not go to the Planning and Zoning Board site on the town site and read those minutes. And without background, this doesn't actually offer much. And also, we still have not addressed the magical 300 feet versus, so if I'm 290 feet, I can't.
Well, when you say we haven't addressed it, you sent it to the planning board, and I think if you listen to the minutes, they did address it when we explained to them what the exception was and what it was for.
It's not been brought back to this committee.
You tasked them with taking a look at that and sending you back a recommendation.
Correct. Which is a one-page change of the ordinance is not it's a document without that. I'm simply saying an explanation of how this was arrived at, and I understand a lot of it has to do with trash, with damaged wood, with trash on the beach, et cetera, et cetera. But this itself, it just doesn't give enough information to the board to say how this was arrived at. And
Yeah, I
we're
understand.
discouraged from going to the meetings, remember that. we're discouraged from going to meetings of boards. So a board report has to have a little flesh on it so that we understand how it came down to this.
Okay. This is before the board. I think if the board wants more information and background, I think the board should, I guess, direct staff to bring that back. Because this is not, you don't even have to vote to change anything. You don't, this is brought before you as the recommendation that came back from the planning board. You don't have to say yay, nay, or anything else. You could change it, you can do, you know what I mean? So if you want more information, then the board just simply needs to ask for more information. Yeah.
Can next month you bring back a little bit more information to put it in context so that, again, so that it's apparent why this was arrived at? I mean, you talk about there were 5 options. And again, if you go into the minutes of the Planning and Zoning Board's meetings, you can find that. But this is where some people will look and it will be their only source of information of if a decision is made to change things. And so that doesn't really give them the description and the background.
I think the consensus of the board is if you bring something back,
It doesn't have to be books and books, but a brief synopsis.
No, I don't have a bit of problem with that, if that's what the board wants.
I think
Yeah.
that's a consensus
Yeah.
of the board.
Thank you, Tim.
Okay.
All right, thank you very much for you and your staff, sir.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Clemens?
Good evening. The memo on page 28 is in reference to stormwater issues. And I was actually seeking board's approval to approve Green Engineering to advertise for bids on the Greensboro Street Pump Station Number 2 upgrade project. And would like y'all's approval. And
Yes,
without-
I'd like to make that motion to approve Green's Engineering to advertise for bids for lift station number 2, which is at Greensboro Street.
Be greatly appreciated.
Is there a second?
Second.
Discussion? Commissioner? Mr. Hewitt, do you have anything you want to
I
add?
guess a comment
All right.
is that we need to move that project forward. There's going to be some integration with funding streams that's required. Notice in Mr. McIntyre's report, there's $2.6 million in there that will be highly likely coming our way to be integrated with the project. Also, the timing of what the bids, most responsive bid will come in, impacts that together with what the bids come in at will impact the financing package that has to go out. So just, there's some juggling that's got to go on in timing that's got to be worked into the equation. So we can communicate that to Leo. I don't know what the sweet spot of that timing is going to be, but we wanted to make sure that we got this registered with the board so that y'all were aware of those other issues that are involved with the bidding and contract process. Because just going out and getting the bid's only going to be good for a certain number of days. And we don't want to go too early on asking for that. So there's some finesse that we're going to have to apply with that process, and we'll dialogue with Leo on these, because Leo's probably not aware that there's a congressional earmark that's coming in here too.
David, do you happen to recall what the last bid came in at, sir?
It was 3.2.
It was a little over $1 million more than what the one we done at Pump Station 3 was. And, you know, I know we kind of pushed it out hoping it would get cheaper, but everything went crazy in the economy. And then I'm sure with that storm there that we've had there, with the damage and everything, You know, we just unknown what it's gonna be this time, and at least we can figure out where we stand, you know.
Yes, sir.
But I do hope it's, something that we can pull off, because actually, I don't know how much more my nerves can take of trying to run the sewer system that looks
Yes,
like
sir.
it's basically up under that intercoastal waterway, and that's pretty much what we were faced with.
Comments or questions, Commissioners? Anything you want us to do, Mr. Hewitt?
I think that your motion and the second that's on the floor is fine for the board's
All right.
consideration. Just be cognizant that there are those other variables involved in the equation.
All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say no. It's unanimous. Madam Clerk, Ms. Pat, while he's at the podium, do you want to move ahead with 11B?
I just wanted Chris to give a description of what was going on during Ian, that the sewer system had to go down because people have asked.
Well, I wish I had a slide show and some pictures, because in all reality, with what we were faced with, everything from the 200 block to the west end was about the equivalent if I was driving down that intercoastal waterway looking at mailboxes sticking up and wondering, how come my commode won't flush? I mean, you literally, whether you got a pump station or not, you can't run a system like that underwater. It just ain't possible. It ain't never going to be possible. We started work at 6:30 that Friday morning. We stayed here the whole time, and at 12 o'clock, I was thinking to myself, well, it's high tide, and we're probably going to be okay. This is going to be all right. And 45 minutes later, I've never seen water come that fast. Anybody that thinks that they would stay in a place, if you, God forbid, if you'd had any wind with that kind of storm surge, I mean, we were mighty blessed. We dodged a lot of bullets, and I feel like we got that system running fairly quick, but it was a lot of storm water to deal with. You know, and keep in mind, we raised those stations to prevent wiping out all the equipment and the length of time that it would take to rebuild the station back. It was never said that when we raised the station up, elevate the station, that we're going to be able to be on this island. We got 2 and 3 foot of water in the street. That's my take. I have learned a lot from this. Well, I learned something every one of these storms. It's the first storm I've ever seen that we actually didn't have that much rainfall, because every time we have one, my biggest thing is thinking, well, my land, boy, this east end is going to be something, because that's usually, you know, with all the rainfall, that's usually where you get it at. But this time was totally different. In my opinion, we had very little wind on the front side. I mean, nothing to amount to anything, a few gusts. And the back side, once the water went down, it left. I mean, pretty fast, other than a few pockets, you know, like one of the ones we were talking about through the west end down there. And you can't hardly recover a system. Well, you can't recover it when it's underwater. I will give the fire department my appreciation, because Doug Todd and about 4 more actually come spent that day Saturday with us helping us pump storm water. But I don't know nothing I could tell anybody that I could say that it won't be like that the next time. I mean, I'm pushing the limits. I'm the license holder of that permit, and when you're in that kind of flooding situation, you ain't got no choice but shut it down.
Do we have candy canes go underwater?
I have all of this video.
Yes.
I don't know how we would not have.
Okay. One of the questions I have about candy canes in general, particularly in the low-lying areas, I notice that now when people are building new houses, they're putting the stack next to the house, and it's up at the first floor level.
Yep.
Are there areas on the island which we now have really come to realize are very prone to flooding, certain canal streets and things that that a reexamination of whether we need to do some moving and alteration of candy canes would be beneficial, or not? I mean, I'm just asking, because...
We've
Absolutely.
already conducted that exercise, and
Absolutely.
and 3-4 years ago, when we did it, the price was $1 million, to do $1 million plus, so whatever that cost would be today.
The
But that
approach
was
that we,
island-wide.
Yeah.
That was island-wide. I'm talking about other specific areas.
Yeah. well, what you've said, all your side streets from High Point that way is like that, but we have took the approach, anything that we find that's damaged, when they put it back, I've been working with Tim, and Tim's worked with them, and what they put back, we've been making them fix. So, it was better this time than it was the last time with candy canes, but, you know, there were a lot of them got tore up last time that were fixed this time.
And that's the sewer vent for
Yeah,
people that may not know what she's talking
but
about.
I'm gonna tell you this much, it is a bad feeling when you pull up to one of those pump stations and it's got 2 foot of water across the top of it, and you walk in there and you're looking at water running down in the hatch, and you're sitting there thinking to yourself, well, how long is this thing gonna be full? To the top, you're dealing with 440 electrical. I'll give you a little, I do got to say this before saying it. I had an old frog-tall rain jacket in my truck that Ken West showed me years ago and talked me into getting it. I hadn't worn it in a long time, but I had it on during that storm. And when I run in that station at 4, even though that equipment's supposed to take water, you know, I ain't no fan of salt water going in there on the components. The only thing we got in the bottom of those now are just 2 sewage dumps that are supposed to be submergible, but like I said, who wants to deal with a hole filling up? I cut the sleeves out of that rain jacket and started stuffing little holes. They're about inch holes that are about like, you know, in the back of a skiff. And after I got about the 3rd one plugged, it dawned on me, you idiot, what good is this doing? There's a garage door right there. That water is coming up. And by the way, I have downgraded my vehicle now. I'm driving one of the oldest jumpers that I could find. There's one sitting under that pump station with 32,000 miles on it that's totaled from salt water. Other than that, if you got anything else, I'll answer, but that's about all I got. And like I said, Miss Pat, I wish I could tell you, or could tell the people something that,
I think just explaining to them what the reality of this system is important periodically.
Yeah. Well, that's the reality of it. You know, and if you won't get down on breath, if somebody really wants to push the issue, you know, I can bring a copy of that operating permit, and you can see. You won't thank me because I'm pushing my boundaries.
But I mean, I do know that Pump Station 4, it's on the side of the POA lot, and that lot is low, and the water just comes, and I don't guess there's anything we can do to protect that pumping station more, is there?
I've got a couple things that I'm gonna add, Miss Pat, and it's not big money tickets, and one of them be adding a hatch on that downstairs part. Like I said, that's supposed to take salt water, but you know, who wants salt water running down in there when you got electrical components or water of any kind? The wet well that's sitting out there, there's nothing ever been done to it. It's not elevated or anything, and actually you got 2 foot of water over the top of the wet well that you're pumping into, and you can't run it like that. I mean, you're in danger of polluting the surrounding waters. So what I'm thinking there is I was actually going to talk to Leo Green, and that's something kind of minor, maybe where I could do like a 2 foot concrete extension on the top of it, get maybe a couple more feet of freeboard. You know, naturally, the way everything's built, you couldn't go there and bulkhead the whole thing, because when you bulkhead something, then you got to think about how long to get the water out during the storm. So one of those two-edged deals. And one more detail. If anybody wants to know who the idiot was that set the pump up down there on the west end before the storm, it was me. And pumps do not do any good when you set them up in the middle of the intercoastal waterway and try to pump. There's nowhere to pump to. The reason I threw that out there is because on Saturday while I was there with the fire department, somebody asked me who the dummy was that put that pump down in that hole. And I told them it was me, you know. Before the storm, You know, I was thinking rain, you know, I'm gonna pump rain. I weren't looking for the river to rise up on me and the whole area be a river. You know, so that didn't work, but we tried.
And for those of you who know the West End, there is the dip. There is between Phase 1 and Phase 2. The road goes down and the road goes up. And I have to say, I have never seen it flooded that badly as it was Friday and Saturday until it got pumped out.
But I will
It was
say
bad.
this, those are one of those storms that we always talk about. I mean, the whole time, the forecast, you know, we're gonna be good, and you ain't gonna get this, and you ain't gonna get that. And it changed, and thank God we had 2 of those stations done, but that could have been one of those storms where you didn't have no structural damage and you didn't have no sewer system. But thank God we didn't have that, but that was played in my mind through that whole time. Other than that, that's all I got, and I wish I could give you more peace of mind than that, but that's pretty much the way it is, and no putting no sugar on it, you know, it is what it is, and I will say this, I seen a lot of people out in that water just playing and looking around, you know. You know,
I warned several people that
Yeah.
the electrical boxes were
I seen
underwater.
several men and women walking around in chest waders, just walking around, just looking. I mean, I'm sitting there thinking, you know, I'm here because I got to be here. And if I was here, I'd not be walking up and down the street playing in the water. I'd be up on the top of that house looking down. You know, but it's the way it is.
We appreciate all that you and your staff do.
Yeah.
We really do.
I have a question.
Yeah.
When the sewer was, when it was shut down, the email blast came out. But is there a way to know other than email? Because we were out getting stuff out of the flooding.
Yeah.
And I didn't know it was shut down until after I got out of the shower.
Yeah.
So is there any other way of knowing?
Well, you know, I don't know any other way of putting it out. You know, I usually try to pass the information over off to David or Alan or Heather, you know, as I get it. And sometimes I might be late to the party. It's kind of, I don't know how to put
That's
this. but-
something we'll try to come up with. in
I just
our-
know a lot of people on the island that were in the water are trying to stop things from flooding, that maybe went in to clean up, might not have seen an email, and just didn't know if there was another way for future storms to let people know to check or
We'll-
know that it might happen.
Yeah.
All right.
And I did have a couple people, sorry, Ellen, who had said that they felt that there was an awful lot of time between the system went down and there weren't very many update messages. Just a message of the system is still down every few hours could be useful. I know it seems repetitive, but that was just a comment I got from several people.
Can I say something to that?
Yeah.
I'm one of the working end of that stick there on the field. I mean, they 7 of us. We're spread very thin. And I will have to say this, and I mean this in a good way. Alan didn't call me every 10 minutes and ask me how much longer it's gonna be. I think he knew that I was doing everything I could. David was the same way. And I tried to get the information out as I could, but it's hard to run around in that kind of situation and, oh my God, in 20 minutes I got to call and tell them again, you know.
Yeah.
I kind of, you know, put it out there to them, you know, when I got some better news there where I can kind of put a time frame on it, I'll try to let you know, because that's the magic key there. Everybody wants to know, when is everything going to be normal? And I do hope one day, if I'm here and we get a storm, that it don't revolve around checkout time and check-in time, because it's always works out that you never get one in the middle of the week.
Right.
I mean, I'm serious. 27 years, and I've never seen one in the middle of the week. It's always the check-out and check-in time. And it don't matter if you got a Category 5 hidden in here, there's always somebody on the way driving to get you. You know.
You guys did a great job.
Yeah.
Thank you.
You did a great job.
Thank you, Mr. Clemens.
All righty.
Number 12, Mayor Holden. The purpose of that being put on the agenda is not to in any way try to prevent vinyl siding from being used on Holden Beach. It's more of an educational attempt. Vinyl siding is a wonderful invention. I put it on my son's house when we built it about 10 years ago. And it was the thick kind that looked like cedar shakes, and they do well if they're applied properly with stainless steel nails and so forth. The builder grade lap siding continues to prove that it's not worth the money you pay and does not last in high winds, and it's just up to the contractor, in my opinion, to educate the owner of the house that he or she is getting ready to build for someone or remodel or repair for someone. A lot of owners find out too late that it's cheaper to do it right in first class the first time than it is to do it multiple times with cheaper materials. It's just an educational opportunity for us. I talked to Mr. Evans about this subject, and I'm sure the commissioners know as well that the building code, we have no authority to change the building code in the state of North Carolina. We have to work within its guidelines, and so we need to educate and get our homeowners to please not use builder grade, the cheap siding. There are multiple brands, there are multiple styles and so forth. And so those that are listening or may review this meeting minutes later, just ask for people to consider not to use the cheap grades of vinyl siding. Examples are, after every storm, we have vinyl siding in the canals that have blown off the sides of houses. That impacts the dredging work that's being done, clogs up drain lines, dredge pipelines and pumps and cutter heads and so forth in the canals. And then the ugliness of the neighborhood after a storm, neighbors complaining about their neighbor's siding under their house and in their yard, and when is this neighbor going to come down and clean it up, or is the town going to clean it up? And we just need to not use that cheap lap siding made out of vinyl, and do a better job in putting it on the house. So, Mr. Evans, did I summarize that, or would you add what I didn't say clearly or what I left out?
We're going to go over that, and we're going to have a discussion about that, but I think what is missed here is the building code recognized years ago that vinyl siding is not a good product to be used by itself underneath these structures. It's been done for a while, you can't put it underneath these structures unless it has a hard package and stuff high. And the reason for that was the low pressure would pull it out. So once it would leave, you didn't lock the insulation. And so you had several factors that you had to look before you use those heat pumps. You don't see that as much. We've been recommending people not do that now, or put a hard surface underneath it before we allow it, or netting. And we've reduced the insulation from the island every time we have a storm, and the amount of vinyl side. Here's where it gets missed out, is that a lot of times, code is the minimum code, that side is designed, is installed right, to meet the same minimum as this other side. Where it lacks at is testing in the fact that while we are like a lot of other communities, we are not exactly the same in the fact that the directions is by which we face the ocean, and the fact that we only have 5-yard setbacks, 5-foot setbacks, which gives us 10 feet for the structure, which creates a total and complete hydrolock prevention when the wind blows right. So if you look at these houses, what you see is we're not seeing the old style where it comes out from underneath. You're seeing it where it comes loose at the corner between homes, and that side is left here. Every once in a while we put on that on one side or the other, but it's between these homes where the velocity and the wind comes straight from the lot. And there's another factor there too that folks don't realize, is that with these new solar gain energy efficient windows, they have to reflect property. And some of those windows will create heat reflection on vinyl siding and degrading as well. So the building department does not recommend using lap vinyl siding. anywhere on the island. We do not recommend it. Now, the heavy-duty half-inch, 3/8 to half-inch, it's got a heavier, more substantial body to it that looks like cedar shaped. Some of them are 4-foot sections and 2-foot sections. They don't seem to come loose because they have more body to it. The lap siding, we've not seen it. We've had minor storms. We've had less damage than other places. Most of our damage is that vinyl siding.
Thank you, sir. Number 13, anybody have anything?
The only thing that I want to add is the appearance of the island. A lot of that vinyl gets into trees and bushes and stuff that makes it really difficult to retrieve. And it is an eyesore and makes it look like we're not taking care of our island when we do.
All right, number 13, Mr. Murdock.
Yeah, I want to talk a little bit about protecting the town properties in the 800 block down towards 796, and possibly even the park course where the exercise facilities are down the side of Ocean Boulevard. Every storm, we have to go back and Chris, I don't know, Public Works, I'm sure, put those things back down. I got a couple questions basically on that. Number one is, we just paid to have the wetlands delineated on all those properties. Not all of them. Well, the 800 block. And the 700 block. So, how long is that good for? 3 years? Okay. I'm kind of looking at it like canal properties where it's really not an option to bulkhead anymore, for a lot of reasons. I think every storm we lose an inch or two, a foot or two. We don't know exactly how much because nobody's monitoring the loss or gain, possibly even of land in those areas. So I was just bringing it before the board is a request or your thoughts of putting out an RFP just to see what it would cost to bulkhead those properties and protect them for future use. Because I feel like, I know we're losing it at the park courses, the little exercise facilities. It seems that those timbers could be maybe concreted or cemented into the ground to better withstand or tied down somehow like the old swimming pool, and let the water come up over them and back. I don't know, but we're losing actual land out from under them to the point where they may even go away if the wetlands encroach into them. I just wanted to get the board's thoughts on protecting those properties, if we could protect those properties.
I would certainly agree. I'd like to see a cost for bulkheading those 800 block lots and that 700 block lot that is a potential piece of property that we want to make. Those are pieces of property we want to make use of. I agree with you that there's a problem with the exercise area. Having a cost, well, is bulkheading possible to save it?
There's one little caveat I need to throw in there, that the answer to this is you've delineated the wetlands in 807. You need to use the delineation to get a permit, then we do it in 3 years. If not, you're limited by the officer in charge of whether or not you can get another.
Right. So we would need to go forward with getting the permits first.
Yeah, I would, instead of getting the bulkhead, you're gonna have to file a permit, and then you have a 3-year window based off the work that will be done with your survey.
How long, what's the time frame on that to, between the delineation of?
I won't exactly answer that, because we can't issue permits to ourselves. That'll have to come out of it. They're usually not that, they're not slow. It could be about the same amount you get judged when you get a bulkhead permit.
That happens pretty quick.
Yeah, they come out, they'll
So if we,
I guess your first step, if you want to consider that, and give comments.
that was my question, do we need to act on the delineation that we currently have
Yes.
as sooner than later? Okay. And we did not do the parkour, so that, if we did that.
Remember, it was only about the parking that we did, it says parkour is 10 car lane.
Okay.
Is that something that we first start with the request for permits? And then they're quite, well, that's my question. Are we gonna, there are several groups out there that do the bulkheading, and from what I've seen, some are better than others. And it would be one of those that we would, want to make sure that we got a request for qualifications and that kind of stuff before we get the pricing, or do we just, apply for the permit and then, work from there?
You're talking two different things there, Rick. Because I was of the impression you wanted to move forward with getting permits to
Correct.
install a bulkhead. That was what you were talking about.
Right.
Camera permit,
Camera
yes.
permit.
Correct.
Can we do both of those in unison? Not the building permit, to get a camera permit that would give us the 3 years you're talking about, and to go ahead and get proposals on what it might cost to do it if we decided to do it. Because we kind of have the information to put it out there where a bulkhead contractor would know where it's gonna be.
So you can use the delineated line to get a proposal, if that's what you want to do. I mean, I was just thinking, we were looking to try to protect that money, those delineations, so you all, it sounded to me like I was trying to make a decision about how the boat is, and I didn't want you to, if your decision got pushed to the wayside years from now, find out you gotta have delineated again.
Well, I think we'd all like to have some kind of idea what it would cost if we were to go ahead and do it also. So if we could do them in unison, that would be my choice. So if I would make a motion to pursue the camera permit and to also put out an RFP to, based on the delineation that we have, the footage of the bulkhead, to get a price on actually putting it in those areas, the material.
This is a public piece of property. This is bulkhead, public bulkhead, private bulkhead. It means that depending on how big it is and how large it is, going to come with a half-inch. Get the price from that. Can't just build it on the camera. That's dependent upon the structure itself. Unbalanced back field. So this comes out chapter 36. This comes out
And so who makes that call?
multi-line building. Not there.
So what's the call?
So the question is, do we need RFP or RFQ, right?
Well, let me
No.
throw something out there,
what I thought.
because on one hand, you're talking about engineering services, and on the other hand, building construction, which is a different set of things. You do have an engineer of record, right angle engineering, that could be directed to provide the board with a probable cost of construction for that facility, and that would satisfy both things. And then as a simultaneous parallel effort to get the CAMA permit, separate and apart from obtaining the engineer's probable cost of construction. Otherwise, you're going to have to select an engineer, do a design, put it out for bid, and do the comparison of the firms that you get back on a price. Before you go to construction, you would have to you would have to bid the project discreetly as a separate project, but you could get an answer from an engineer on the probable cost of construction, should that be the goals, the board's objective.
So let me be sure you're clear, you're saying we have to have an engineer to design that bulkhead?
If I had to
Is
take a
that
guess
your-
without going out there with a tape measure, I would say yes. If you want to have some real property there when you get done, I would say yes. I mean, the explanation would be you build a low wall that really protects you from no water, or you build a high wall that's engineered that affords you the ability to keep the property. In other words, if you decide to build a wall that's less than 3 feet high, you know what I mean, you don't have enough unbalanced backfill to require an engineering. But if you want to build a wall that's tall enough to get the highest portion of the adjacent property there that you can in order to protect the property and make it more usable, then you don't have any choice but to go with an engineer. The good decision would be to go with an engineer.
Well, obviously, we would go with your recommendation on that. I don't know how tall the wall would be, I was thinking it was pretty short. But then I would pursue, with the engineer handling the entire project, I would pursue getting an engineer to handle the entire project and get us a bid on what it would actually cost. If that's the way it has to be done, if that's what you're saying.
Yeah, I think that would be I think in this particular case, because what we've got is we've already delineated the area. We already know we're going to have a bulkhead. You know what I mean? Bulkheads are not this fancy design. We're not making architecture. We're not doing that kind of stuff. And the products and materials are already tested and proven. We'll be following the guidelines of the North Carolina law by simply getting the engineer because they're required for such a wall. You follow what I'm saying? We're not inventing no new thing here. We're just following the rule of law.
Fair enough. That's my move.
Madam Clerk, would you read the motion that you have?
Is the motion what you said originally, or are you changing it?
No, to get the engineer to handle the whole project of pursuing the camera permit and down to the construction of the bulkhead, pricing of the construction of the bulkhead.
Now, that's just for the 700 and then the small section, the 800 and the small section and the 700 block.
That's what we have delineated, yes.
Well, now, we delineated all the parking areas.
Not
Okay.
the North Street.
Madam Clerk, now read your motion, please.
To get the engineer to pursue the camera permit and pricing of construction of the bulkhead for what we have delineated in the 700 800 block.
All right, did we have a second? Ms. Pat, was that you? Or do we-
If Tim and David think this is phrased right,
Yeah, I think
is it clear?
Yeah, I think
Is
it
it
is.
phrased right?
Yeah.
Second, okay.
All right, now officially discuss
Yeah.
it. Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say no.
No.
Okay, it's 4-1, Madam Clerk. All right, number 14, Ms. Pat,
Oh, okay.
page 2 of the agenda.
Right. Okay, you know, we've had on the priority list for a couple of years, reevaluating the question of a second water tower, which a lot of people think we need, and then there's a lot of people who think we don't. So I would simply propose, as this has been a priority, we should proceed with a study to evaluate the need, and if the need is confirmed, the options for moving forward. Issuing an RFQ for this would be the first step. And again, it would be something to get a project together that's shovel-ready, which, you know, makes it easier if you're looking for grant money or low-interest loans to have everything defined on what you're going to do. So my motion would be for the town manager to put together an RFQ for a study to evaluate the need and options moving forward for a second water tower.
Second, anybody?
I'll second that.
Discussion, anyone?
My only discussion on that is to make sure everybody understands that, is we're not just wanting to just put up another water tower because of pressure issues. But I think, our town maintenance, team has explained pretty vividly to me that, during the peak of the summer, that, we spend about all night trying to fill that tank up. By the end of the day, we're actually pumping water as fast as we use it, and that's great. And we still have another 700 to 1,000 homes that can be built here on the island. So to look toward the future, that's one aspect of it, is to make sure that we have enough water to run the island. Number two is, and my most important fear is, what if we have a fire? And it's at 7:30 at night when we've just about depleted our water. It's something that you really need to think about when we're talking about this, and you say, well, why in the world do we need a second one? Well, it's more for our own protection than anything else. It's not water pressure. It's not just because we want one. I think it's the engineers that we solicit will tell us that there is definitely a need, especially as we continue to add more houses to the island.
Right. Mr. Hewitt, you want to make a comment about this in any way? All right. Yeah. All right. Do we have a motion? And a second?
A second.
No more discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed say no. Unanimous. Paid parking, Mr. Hewitt.
Yes, sir. Been in conversation with Mr. Varner with Auto Connect regarding the possibility about ending paid parking a little bit early, October the 28th, and allow free parking island-wide for the festival weekend beginning October 29th and 30th. I suggested, since this was a contract matter, that the decision would require the board's approval. And Mr. Varner's here tonight, and he'd need direction should we turn it off early so that he can plan accordingly with his cruise by ending it early on October the 28th.
For those that can't see or be here, Mr. Varner is at the podium. Would you make your comment, sir?
The only comment was, in order to promote the festival, I thought it would be advantageous for the town to suspend paid parking from our system standpoint, because we do not have delineation between all of the individual parking areas. If we stop it in one area, we stop it everywhere. So it seemed like a reasonable thing to promote the festival, number one, prevent any confusion. We can just turn all of the rates off on our system to zero, so if people do try to pay, they don't have a problem. The only other consideration is working with the chief on the other areas of the island that we monitor for parking violations. If you want us to continue over the weekend to do that, or if we just stop everything a couple days early. But definitely, from my standpoint, it was to allow the town to promote free parking for the festival.
Jeremy, what's your thoughts on the undesignated parking spaces? Like, if he didn't monitor those during the festival, do you think it's gonna be a problem?
No, I'm actually kind of confused by your question.
Well, people are obviously gonna have free parking in designated parking spaces.
Correct.
For the festival. That was our plan the whole time, but this could open it up. If he didn't look after the rest of the island
Right.
in the same period of time, do you think it's gonna be a problem if he just drops everything?
I don't know how to answer that question, to be honest. You know what it looks like over here during the festival, so they could, I've seen them parked any and everywhere they can squeeze in. I don't know how to answer that question. I think it would be best to have them continue to monitor that, if we could, but, that's your contract with him and how y'all work that out.
That's certainly fine with us. We'll just suspend the paid parking, but we can monitor all of the rest of the island as we normally do.
I'm just going to remind everybody what Brunswick Avenue looks like on festival weekend, what all of the East End side streets look like, even what Ocean Boulevard up to a certain point looks like. We have people who come over here and, they get their cars off the road onto the right-of-way. And if it's posted and roped, they don't park there. So, this is the question I have, is how much you want to inhibit visitors coming over and people who are further away than walking distance and keep them from being able to go to the festival. Okay, I just think that has to be out there to people, to remind them, particularly Brunswick Avenue and the East End side streets. It's chock-a-block.
It is.
And, so if you're going to monitor that, those are all absolutely no parking.
That's actually a good point.
Good point, that's fine. We will be glad to monitor those areas.
I
What-
would rather we simply stop the
Yeah.
program.
Yeah, I think
Stop the program
Just stop
completely.
the program as of the 28th and
fair.
rely on the police to patrol, and if they do see anything really out of line with people pulling into yards or something, you deal with it.
Right.
But festival weekends, generally, everybody kind of accepts that the right-of-ways nearby are going to be full.
Chief, you could put on the sign, paid parking suspended,
Yes, we could do that.
so when people coming across the bridge. Is that a motion, Madam?
Motion to suspend the paid parking season and any kind of,
And auto enforcement.
and auto enforcement as of the 28th of October.
Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Any further discussion?
My only thoughts again are with Jim and his Auto Connect group. You've done a great job this summer. I think we were worried about the perception of your ticket writers and this sort of stuff, and everybody was very professional. And as nice and as helpful as we could be, sometimes there were some telephone call issues, but you seemed to get them addressed, and we appreciate your efforts.
Thank you. With over 60,000 parked vehicles here this summer, and a violation rate of less than 3.5%, which from my perspective is fabulous. I'm used to 7-8%. This town, this island, this community, surrounding communities have done a wonderful job of communicating and making this a very successful year. So thank you very much.
All right, thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say no. It's unanimously passed. Public comments, number 16. If you want to say anything about anything good or bad or indifferent, if you raise your hand, I'll recognize you. Yes, ma'am. Tell us who you are and where you live.
Marty Airwood, 114 Shrimp Street, East End. We want to thank, I personally, and I was part of the conversation with paid parking, want to thank Mr. Varner and the police department. The east end of the island was so much more pleasant this year as far as parking goes. I also take a different angle on the part of the $500,000 for the land in which the pier exists. I've never seen it as us saving a bunch of sticks out in the middle of the ocean. I've been here for 33 years. I've been here when there was so much undeveloped area going to the west end that you're almost afraid to drive to Frigate Avenue in December, because if you broke down on the road, nobody's going to find you for a while. And I want to see, and I see it as an advantage, that those 7 lots that are inclusive of the pier are being saved in perpetuity for the people who live here, that there will be nothing built there that can be a mansion or whatever. And if the pier exists because of it, fine, but I never saw it as we're saving a pier. I saw it as we are saving land that cannot be built on, that the people of Holden Beach will be able to use, and I thank you for accepting that grant. Thank you.
Thank you.
Irvin Woods, 289 Ocean Boulevard East again. I was here for Ian, and I want to commend the people who built the beach with the last renourishment. I don't know if it was intended that way, but the fact that there's a crown on the beach on the east end was extremely helpful in protecting the dune. I watched as the high tide waves were crashing onto the out to the oceanside edge of the crown. Water was flowing over, and a lot of water settled in along the base of the dune. But the base of the dune in the section where I live never had waves pounding on the dune. The waves would crash on the outside, water would gently come over, settle in, and not rush back. I think that end of the beach has probably got as much sand on it now as it did prior to Ian. We had some damage to the sand fences in that section. I watched as it happened. The water would come in, the wind was blowing it down. I'd like for the town to consider the next time they do sand fencing, or when they go back to repair these, consider 3 2x4s rather than just the 2 on the end. I'm going to probably do a little wire patching and propping some up, but I'm not going to be banging 2x4s. But I've been in my house for a lot of, every hurricane that I wasn't required to leave, and going back to the vinyl siding again, the big sections of siding. The other advantage to it, in addition to I've never had a piece blown off or blown loose since 2008 when the house was built, is while my siding might have faded a little bit, I can't tell, but if it's faded evenly. I've had neighborhood houses with hardy plank, including one I own, that have been painted 3 times in the last 15 years, and my siding is holding up well. I highly recommend it. Thank you.
Anyone else wish to speak?
Jim Bauer, 329 Ocean Boulevard West. Oh, man. Let's get back to the pier, and let's get back to the position of the civilian and government. You started out this pier thing. There was a huge area canvas where the majority of these people did not want to. The majority of the people on this island did not want to purchase this pier. You did anyway. Now what you're doing is you left it off. You left this item off the menu so that we have virtually nobody here. And what you did is you came in and you put it on the agenda at the last possible minute, and then 20 minutes later we're voting on a multi-million dollar plot of land that's completely overvalued. I want to remind you that there is the United States Constitution and the North Carolina Constitution. There is supposed to be public hearing, notice, hearing, and comment. And what you're supposed to do is you're supposed to elicit from the entire community, is this a good idea or not? Because you're not supposed to be making decisions by yourselves. You're supposed to be making decisions based on the opinion of the majority of the people that live here. And you have been failing to do this around this pier property. This is an utter failure. You're also opening yourself up for all sorts of litigation, because what you're doing is you're not following the rules of North Carolina and the United States. I would recommend. I can't say anything. I don't understand. But I watch it here. You throw around with a very, very limited tax base. You throw around $1 million packages as if it's nothing. There's only 2,000 houses here. I can't fathom what's going on back there. But you're supposed to be representatives of a government. You're not supposed to be commissioners in the Russian sense. You're not supposed to be laying down the law as you see fit, with no public notice, no public comment, and no public hearing. And I would plead along with Pat. I would really plead with you guys to reconsider this. This is tying us for a very, very small amount of money for a very, very long period of time, and you never know when these rules are going to change. It's abhorrent, and it's really, really, really disappointing. I thought when we left our old house, I had left this kind of government, but I guess I haven't. So disappointed.
Anyone else wish to speak about anything? All right, town manager's report. Mr. Hewitt?
Yes, sir.
I want to give a brief subjective opinion on how our strand functioned during Hurricane Ian. I believe that we had little to no damages on the east end, sand-wise, and our engineered beach. Along the whole span of the island, our vegetation got a pretty good rinsing, and we took pretty good amount of sand fence hits. But the event was more of, in my mind, was more of a repositioning of the strand by pushing the sand from seaward to up on the hill. It's probably a semi-wild guess of what it's going to take to repair the sand fence and vegetation to an as-before condition in the planted areas. It's probably in the $300,000 range. We're still working on that and evaluating. As long as there's some people like Irv that go out there and fix their sand fences, it might not cost us that much. I would like to qualify that the west end did have damages caused by erosive processes. Many of the dunes down there and several of the private walks were adversely impacted to the extent that they had to be condemned, and when you see those red placards on them, that's what that means. There's probably half a dozen or 8, would you say 10, that were hit down there. We do not intend to survey for losses, strand losses, i.e. we're not going to try to quantify and qualify for FEMA damages, because there's not going to be a FEMA declaration for Category G facilities, and we'll defer to the long-term trend analysis that's laid out in our beach management plan. By the way, ATM will be presenting that annual status as of spring 22 at the November board meeting. I believe he's in the final throes of wrapping up that report. So that's the intent there. There has been a declaration for Category B and Z damages, but that doesn't mean much for us because that's your getting ready cost and some of your overtime, although we are evaluating those costs during that time frame to see if there's if we meet the thresholds for reimbursement. Suffice it to say, again, in my opinion, that we see strand equilibrium actively in process. I'm seeing pink-hued sand pushing back up on the beach. I'm seeing sand moving down the beach with littoral drift. So any of the sand that was repositioned is actively in the near shore at worst, and for the best, it's been pushed up on the sand dune over the top of the existing vegetation. I would like to echo Chris's comment of thanks to Chief Doug Todd Robbins, Tyler Johnson, and Ken Hall of the Tri-Beach Engine 872, whose mobile stormwater management assistance greatly contributed to the town's full and rapid restoration of the island's sewer services. Any questions on the strand stuff?
Any observations on what the inlet looked like after the storm? Shalot Inlet.
That was part of the commentary on the west end. As far as it filling in, I don't have the hydro survey stuff, but it looked like it was eating up pretty good too.
I was just wondering if there was going to be, given the number of questions coming about the impact of the Ocean Isle groin and the dredging that was done by the Corps last year out of Shalot Inlet, has there been any, shall we say, unexpectedly dramatic change in the inlet in terms of erosion?
I can't comment that because I've not been privy to that type of information or what the Corps may have in mind. I know there's a protocol in place to determine whether or not the groin influences erosive aspects, but I haven't been privy to that specific conversation related to this storm.
Okay. Any way to find out?
I don't know. Moving on to the budget report, we've put together a 60,000 foot view of the second quarter slides as of the end of September. Want to go over just a few of the highlights of our operational funds, which are the general fund, the water and sewer fund, the Beach Parks Access and Recreation Trust Fund, along with the Canal Dredging Fund.
First quarter. July, August, September.
Yeah, what she said, second quarter. It's 30, the quarter ending 30 September.
Okay.
Yes. Yeah, my bad. What you're going to see in the specifics is that the big collections like ad valorem tax, which are the sewer capital fees, and the canal dredging, we're not to that point in time where we collect those yet. So those values are almost nothing, which is normal for this point in time. Although our occupancy tax is very strong, at or near 70% for the quarter ending 30 September. We had budgeted right at $3.7 million, and we're at 2.57 versus the same time frame in FY22, where we had budgeted 3.65 million and had collected 2.25 million. So not only have we budgeted a little bit more, but we've collected a little bit more, 70% as opposed to 62%. Depending on the time of year, our capital debts have to be paid. At this point in time, it's early on in the year, and we've only paid less than 10%. Our capital debt, notwithstanding the FEMA projects, is collectively about $3.69 million, and we've just made the first few debt payments of $364,000. Those mandatory outlays have been made, and we're on schedule. Now it's going to pick up with the bigger ticket items in this current quarter. So from a centralized perspective, a centralized cash perspective, all revenues, all expenses, we're about $500,000 ahead. And the chart before you illustrates that. We're for our general fund budget, we've collected about a little more than $300,000, and we've expensed a little over $1 million. So that fund is about $750,000 in the red. Normal for this time of year. Again, on the water and sewer side, we've collected almost $800,000 in fees and expensed about $1.17 million. Again, at this time of the year, we're running in the red of $387,000. On the other hand, on the B-Part fund side, we've collected $2.6 million and expensed about $962,000, and in the black on that, $1.68 million. In our canal dredging fund, That is a carrying fund with de minimis expenses and revenues as of this time of year, slightly in the red at $3,500. Suffice it to say, the net on all the funds is about $542,000 in the black. So those are just some of the highlights. The bottom line opinion from a budgetary standpoint is this is normal for this time of year. The general fund, the water fund, the canal dredging funds are in the red, but it's atypical performance this time of year. But what it does is it underscores the need for healthy fund balances. We spend money up front, and we collect a lot of money in the middle of the year. It's kind of like a watermelon through a snake. It just comes all in at one point in time. So if there are any particular questions on any of the line items, we do post this on a monthly basis to the town's website, and it's on hbtownhall.com, and it's, if you go to the administration finance website, we try to post it every month, close to the beginning of the month for the previous month as we can.
Any questions of Mr. Hewitt?
On the budget. Got a couple.
On the budget. All right.
Moving right along, we have been informed by the North Carolina Department of Transportation that they've run into some issues with permitting of the CAMA, permitting of the resurfacing and bike lanes with CAMA. That's going to require them to perform additional work in order to get the CAMA permit and execute the contract. Conversations with them were inconclusive as to exactly what the impact on the spring paving schedule would be, but in that conversation, they readily admit to that they're attempting to get it reconciled so that we can do it before Memorial Day, but it was going to be an issue they're going to have to deal with. And specifically, we're talking to the hydraulics of the road resurface and bike lane project. So more to come on that later. It's not what we want to hear, but it's what we've been told.
Have we mentioned to DOT about reducing our speed limit so that we can start negotiating with them? Could we get another public, walkway or two? It was something we mentioned when we were reducing the speed limit, that we go back to DOT and see if it would help.
To be quite frank with you, I was so disappointed by the conversation. This is all CAMA. This is all camera related. It's a hang up. Everything else is a go before they can issue a contract proposal. They've got to have the permits in hand. So that was what the issue was. But I have not had a conversation with them as to what the specifics of the locations are going to be. I think that's a fairly easy thing. I don't want to get down into details before that seems like a detail that would fall readily in place once we get the big trunk of the tree laid down on the ground and get the permit in place. I was so disappointed after that conversation, I couldn't think about much more. I think my answer is no. The storm canceled Run HB. That was supposed to happen on 1 October. We're working on a new date. Good news is that the Mountains to the Coast bike ride, which was a week-long ride from the mountains down to Holden Beach, ended on Saturday the 8th without event, and want to put a call out in recognition of the Veterans Day luncheon to be held Thursday, November the 10th at noon I believe it's here at Town Hall. Pre-registration is required, and we'll get better specific information forthcoming our normal public information releases.
David, that seems to coincide with the special meeting for the contractor. So that's,
Guess we're going to be having it outside.
wow, yes, sir. That'll be held at noon. Thanks, sir.
Yeah.
This second day.
Yes.
It is.
Well, I don't think that we should move the contractor's date because I'm sure they have things, but it's a lunch. If there's a contractor that wants to go to the lunch out there, they can go to the lunch. You can arrange the schedule and they can either eat in here or go eat with a vet. Yeah. Or eat twice.
Yeah. I think we'll get through it.
Anything else, Mr. Hewitt?
No, that's it for me.
Any questions from the board? Mayor's comments, most everything I had to say was covered. I would like to thank the good Lord for letting us get through hurricane season without the damage that we could have received. God bless those people in Florida. Pray for them. And I've said it over and over again, October the 15th, if there's not one in sight, we probably are okay. And I'll say it again this year, we're probably okay for this year. So with that, Mr. Rick?
Well, again, this was, back to the hurricane issue, this was my first experience with the emergency management team. I was, I guess that's part of the mayor pro tem position, but I learned a lot. I learned how ready the town of Holden Beach gets that nobody else knows about. But every department head, everything tries to get covered. Tim's inspection department, Chris, the town staff does a great job of getting everything together. We were a little late on getting the information on how bad the storm was going to be, but I think under the circumstances, I think we did a good job. A little side note that during our observation during the storm, we noticed that, as it was called this evening, the stack of sticks persevered the storm rather well. I saw water trying to come up through the bottom of it, and that the pier did not move a bit. So it looks like it's good. It's in good shape. I've got a lot of public. I'm a fisherman. I fished every day unless it's raining. I'm out front fishing, and I've had a lot of people ask about when that we could possibly get that property opened up for fishing again. And as it was said this evening, the people that don't have the luxury, as I call it, or the blessing of being able to live here at this beautiful place, it gives them a place where they can come and enjoy the beach. Otherwise, they're going to be parked up and down the boulevard, and anywhere they can get to the beach is where they'll go. So I think again we've learned a lot this summer. I want to especially thank Chris and Scott and his staff, his new members on his staff, from what they reported to me, as we discussed. They didn't report. As we discussed, the guys that have come on board, they seem to all pitch in and work together. And Chris was right. They were out there from sun up to way past sundown and back again the next day, and they worked tirelessly to make sure this island got back in operating order. We really couldn't do it without dedicated employees like we have in our maintenance department. Again, I'd like to thank the chief for that safety message. I've had people talk to me about that have seen it, and that's a good thing. I think you took a little different approach than I was. What I was thinking is to maybe if you wrote enough tickets, they'd finally straighten up. But I think using, maybe as I call it, the fear factor, that they are a very dangerous piece of equipment to operate on the road, so I again commend you for that. I've got a lot of calls and stuff about us moving forward on the projects that we're working on, some with hesitation, but we're doing, I think as a town, we're moving forward. We've got a great group of commissioners. It was, I think it's really nice. Now, we've done a little shuffling of seats here, but it's nice not to have an empty chair. And we've got us a new Gerald. It's, the Judge Arnold is, I think is going to be an asset to our group. So we're glad you're with us, sir. I'd also like to thank Jim Varner again. I did it when you were speaking, but the professionalism that you and your staff showed to us this summer, that was one of my greatest fears, you know, that we were going to run people off. But people still came. People still had a good time. And it changed the chaos we had here on the beach parking into some part of normalcy. And again, thank you, Jim, and your staff for doing such a good job and working with the people that didn't understand exactly how to do it. I want to thank our attorney for doing the hard work he did, that we didn't get any help from any of our neighboring communities to end the ludicrous shark fishing tournament. That was something that, how in the world can we promote Holden Beach as a family-friendly beach when we have a shark fishing tournament? That's just, it just doesn't balance out. So, you know, we took the blunt of the cost, but we should let our neighbors be mindful that what we did helped us all out. One other thing, and I'll stop this rambling. We were going to have a pancake supper. The fellowship hall, the men's fellowship at the chapel is going to put on a pancake breakfast. That'll be Saturday morning of the Festival by the Sea. Please try to come by and support the chapel. We would certainly appreciate it. That's it, Mr. Mayor.
Oh, wait up, man. Thank you. Good report, good report.
That's what you wanted.
Oh, I'm sorry. Brian?
I want to thank everybody again for coming out tonight. I love seeing people here. Thanks to everybody that's listening. Chris, amazing job, buddy. You and the guys, long hours, no way to overcome that situation, totally unexpected. I'm going to pile on to what you said, that there's absolutely no way you can keep that system running under conditions like that, with bike lanes, without bike lanes. It's not going to matter, because it's just the waterway and the ocean that at some places did connect. We had a couple breaches in the dunes, and I mean, we were all, including myself, one of the dummies driving around in 2 feet of water out there. I know the candy canes were breached. I saw several of them. System was obviously inundated, so for people to think that we're going to be able to use the restroom in a situation like that, might as well just go ahead and nip that in the bud. It's not going to happen. I'm proud to live in. I'll tell you why, because during that storm and after that storm, people were helping people. Neighbors were helping neighbors. This island got put back together pretty fast. And I've never seen people pitch in quite like that in a long time, and it was one of those bury the hatchet days. No matter who believes what or who thinks what, we're all still neighbors here, and it was good to see people picking up $200 RPZ covers and valve boxes and things like that, and trash cans rolling back under the houses, getting trash out of the street, vinyl siding up, whether it was your responsibility or not. And people just did a great job in doing that. And it's a great place to live. I'm with Marty and a lot of other people about the pier. It's not just a pier, it's a piece of property. One of my best friends, Gerald, who's no longer with us anymore, we have grown up here, been coming here and been around this beach for a long time. We weren't about to let that piece of property go. So we'll fight the fight that it takes to maintain that piece of property. And I hope anybody following this board or any board in the future will have a little compassion for that piece of property, that we saved it not only for us, but for everybody across on the other side of Mammon. That parking lot's full all the time. I don't understand sometimes what people complain about, because if the town hadn't bought it, they wouldn't have a parking lot there to park in. Paid parking was it was an evil that came out of that, but it afforded us the opportunity to have the money without putting that burden on the taxpayers. And Jimmy done a great job. This island was not, it was just, it looked like normal business to me. Instead, Rick said chaos. I'm not sure it was total chaos, but at times it was pretty bad. I mean, the way things were going, somebody would block somebody in that couldn't get out for the whole day. And I commend you. You did a great job, I think. And I think Jeremy and the police, I've talked to all of them, and we're all in agreement. So Tim, the inspection department's still doing an awesome job. So I know it's a staffing issue. And Jeremy, I wish you luck, and we're working on that. We're going to try to get some incentives or whatever we need to do to get this town running and firing on all cylinders. It works better that way. Take care of yourself, Chris. Don't let it eat you alive, man, because I understand. It's going to be all right. We're going to get it. We'll do what we got to do to get this thing under control. So, anyway, good to see all you guys. Festival's coming up. Have a great festival. Me, for one, I'm glad to see some cooler weather, because I can't stand the 90-something degree humid days. And it's an enjoyable time of year for me.
Doc, you got anything?
I think most of it's been covered. I would like to thank Chris and the Public Works and the first responders. Y'all did a fabulous job. I think a lot of people took for granted that storm wasn't going to be bad, but when it turned back and came towards us, it was pretty impressive storm surge. Living on the canal, we've learned to get flood ready, and I think we need to stress in situations like this where it turned and got worse, that it's better to be ready and get all that stuff picked up than to have it floating everywhere. We get a lot of nice things in the canal, but we also have to pick up a lot of trash. And everybody's been pretty good. We get stuff out and we try to get it back to the owners, but it's best not to see all that trash floating around. So I think we just stress to get storm ready. I look at it as a way, instead of spring cleaning, we do fall hurricane cleaning. We get everything cleaned up, picked up, everything up out of the way, and it helps a lot. But it was good to see neighbors working together. Our street, we're blessed. We have a lot of people that live there full time, and we all kind of help each other out, get cleaned up. But that storm surge was a heck of a storm surge, and I really appreciate all the work that you guys did to keep us. We were lucky we didn't lose power. But and I'm just looking forward to the festival, for everybody to come be kind to one another, and let's enjoy our wonderful beach and have a great weekend.
Ms. Pat?
I appreciate how many people came out, and I appreciate how many people stayed through the meeting today. So it's nice to see at the end of the meeting almost everybody is still here. I'm going to answer again to the people who aren't necessarily here complaining about we don't have any plans and we don't know what you're doing. Well, we put out RFQs for the pier. We put out RFQ for Block Q. We picked the engineering firms. There was a special meeting that we had our engineering firm, our professional firm here to talk about the pier property. They're going to be bringing things to us in the upcoming weeks, months. You have to get the firms in place. They talk to us. Then we're going to see things that people can look at and appreciate. It's not that there aren't plans. There's not documents to look at maybe, but but they are in progress. And again, on the pier property, I will remind everybody, there is the document that the board endorsed from early this year that goes through how the board made the decision and what the premises were for moving forward. And things aren't probably going to look that much different from that, except maybe how long it's going to take. Maybe it'll take shorter, maybe it'll take longer for some of it, but the concepts were already there. So let's just be patient for a little while and let these firms get going and get stuff on paper so that the citizens can start seeing how this is going to look. We're going to have a stormwater RFQ out soon. We'll be getting a project done. We'll get the water. Infrastructure is important. All of these things are piling on top of each other, and it'll all get put into a perspective of a long-term town plan as the pieces come together. So it doesn't happen overnight, but we are working on it. Thank you.
Judge Arnold?
Well, Mr. Mayor, I am very honored to be part of this board, to have a voice in the collective decision-making, which I have been very impressed with for some time. I have said a lot of good things happening that have happened at Holden Beach. It stands out because of all the things that I've heard here, spoken here, things that the staff does. I concur in all of the comments that I've heard. It is a great place to live. It is a blessing. It's a great beach. I'm just proud to be on board.
Thanks, sir. Madam Clerk, we're now on number 20. Consideration of going into an executive session. You want to read your...
Yes, sir. Closed session pursuant to North Carolina General Statute 143-318-11A3, consult with the attorney, and pursuant to North Carolina General Statute 143-318-11A6, personnel.
Is there a motion to go into executive session?
Motion.
Second.
Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed say no. We will be going into executive session, and we all thank all of you adjourned.
I did that.
I'd like to make a motion we adjourn.
Is there a second? All in favor say aye.
Aye.